safe. Okay, I think we're recording now. Welcome everybody. This is the meeting for everyone to be getting information regarding our upcoming international tour to Sweden and Norway. My name's David Haas. For those of you that may not be familiar with me or may have students that are in 8th grade right now going in to be a freshman at West High next year, but welcome. I just wanted to give a little bit of background. This is probably about the past 10 years. Touring has just been a really huge part of our choral program. Every year for the past 6 years, we tour domestically. So we go to places like Minneapolis, Chicago, St. Louis, with Virtuosa and West Singers, our two auditioned groups. And we feel very strongly as a part of those tours that every student should be able to participate regardless of their ability to pay. Because we feel it's important for us to share our music out in the community and give students the opportunity to sing in really acoustically rewarding spaces. And so to kind of supplement that touring philosophy and sharing our music out with the world and singing in one-of-a-kind venues, we've paired with Gateway for the past several trips to open up the possibility for anyone to attend an international tour every 2 years. The link that I put in the chat gives you a link to our website, iowacitywestchoirs.com. And if you click on choirs and international choir, it'll give you kind of some pictures from places we've gone in the past. We went to Germany, Austria, and the Czech Republic before. We took a tour to England and Ireland. And just the most recent, this past summer, a much delayed trip because of COVID, we went to Italy and sang all over Italy, including a Vatican Mass service. And so I've always been very impressed with Gateway's ability to give us the kind of tour experience that we're really, really looking for, and that your kids get a really great educational experience, as well as getting to sing in acoustical spaces that they just couldn't get the opportunity to sing in the United States. So it's a really wonderful opportunity to be able to go out and travel internationally, but it's really, really a special experience for your students to have the opportunity to travel with their friends, as well as get the chance to sing as an ensemble in a lot of these facilities. So I'm going to leave most of the talking to Matt Prelogger, and he's going to give you an overview of the tour, and we're going to then open up for questions. I'll answer questions that seem more pertinent to me, and he'll answer questions specific to logistics of the trip. And that's pretty much it on my part. Go ahead and take it away, Matt.
Well, thanks, Mr. Haas. I'm Matt from Gateway. A little bit about Gateway is we're based up in the general Minneapolis area, just north of you guys. Family-run company, been in business since 1989. There's about 15 of us, small company. And I've had the pleasure of working with Iowa City, as Mr. Haas mentioned, for the last several tours. So it's nice to keep this going. And yeah, so without further ado, I'll just jump into what we've put together for you all. So just kind of a brief overview of, as I double check my slides here, brief overview of Sweden and Norway. Obviously, this part of the world, especially up in Minnesota, there's quite a bit of Swedish and Norwegian heritage, maybe down there in Iowa as well. Sweden, Norway, just over 5 million people. English, folks, is very widely, commonly spoken. I dare say just as much as it is in Iowa. I mean, the Swedes and Norwegians are very fluent in English, so nothing to worry about there. Different currencies: Swedish kroner, Norwegian kroner. And yeah, folks, about the size of California, 7-hour time zone difference. In this time of year that you're going to be going, roughly just over a year from now, further north in the earth, so that means you're going to have daylight from roughly 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then we've got a slide here just to show you sort of a general geographic overview of, you've got Norway in the red, on the left, get out my trusty laser pointer here, and then Sweden on the right. So overlay with the US just to give you sort of a perspective of the size of these countries. Next slide, I'm going to take you to what your general path that you're going to travel. This is the southern portion. This is Norway here on the left, Sweden on the right, Stockholm here on the right. Stockholm's the capital of Sweden, Oslo, capital of Norway, and Bergen. Gives you a general idea of the part of the country, part of the world that you're going to travel through. So the first day, we have you flying to Stockholm. We'll take a look at what's best, either Chicago or Minneapolis. We usually look at both airports to determine what's the best routing, best flights, best pricing for your group. So either Minneapolis or Chicago will fly into Stockholm. Stockholm, like I said, capital of Sweden, just over 1 million people. And this is the Gamlestan, the old town of Stockholm. You'll get so one thing I always like to point out is that Gateway, we're based in Minnesota. We hire local people, local guides that will be with you. So you'll get a city guide in Stockholm who lives there, who knows Swedish, who knows all the history and all the sites, who will show you around. You'll take a walking tour of Old Town, take a bus tour, and you'll also visit the Vasa Museum. The Vasa is an interesting place because this.
Matt, I'm sorry. I just want to get in the recording while I'm thinking of it. I also wanted to clarify, regardless if we leave from Minneapolis or Chicago, your only responsibility is getting your students to West High School. We typically take a charter bus to Minneapolis or Chicago. So before we leave, no matter where we fly from, your responsibility is getting to West High, and that's it. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for that clarification. All right, so we've got the Vasa Museum. This massive ship is still 98% intact. It sunk. Unfortunately, due to a bad accident, unfortunately, it was bad engineering, really. The ship sunk about a few hundred meters from where it took off. So very sad, actually. But what it means for us today is, and this was only 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, where they dug this thing up and it was sunk for over 300 years. But because it was brand new when it sunk, it's virtually intact, 98% intact. So it's like going in a time machine from 300 years. So you see this full museum for the Vasa ship. So this is just one of the highlights of Stockholm itself. Another place we'll take you in the Stockholm area is Sigtuna, which is just north of Stockholm. A beautiful, small little town to explore, walk around before heading up north to Uppsala. The highlight here that you can see in this slide, folks, is this massive, looking for my trusty laser pointer again, massive cathedral, the Uppsala Domkyrka, Uppsala Cathedral. Our hope is that we would get the choir to be able to sing in there. This is known as just some of the most amazing acoustics. It's a massive cathedral, but the way that it's structured is under the nave. The choir singing under the nave gives you this amazing acoustics. Even though it's this massive cathedral, to have this small choir, relatively small choir, singing in this massive cathedral, it's a beautiful space, beautiful acoustics, a great spot to take you. So we're going to spend 3 nights in Stockholm, in Uppsala, in Sigtuna, and then we're going to fly actually to Oslo. So we're going to kind of cheat a little bit just to make up some time. We're going to fly to Oslo, capital of Norway, just home of just over 1.5 million people. And then we'll get you introduced to Oslo, have dinner that night. One thing I'd like to mention about the hotels, you'll all be in 3 or 4 star hotels. And you'll be in double occupancy. So that means 2 people per room. You might be used to 3 or 4 people sharing in the US here, mostly 4. When I was in high school, we were sharing 4 per room. In Europe, you're going to be in 2 per room. And that's just because the European rooms are smaller. So that's nice, actually, because it's only 2 people instead of 4. But another thing about the hotels is you're going to have breakfast included at the hotels every single day. Next day in Oslo, we'll do a city tour of Oslo. This is going to be the Screaming Baby, the famous Screaming Baby, Frogner Park, Gustav Vigeland. You're going to go by the Akershus medieval fortress from the 13th century. I mean, think about that, the 13th century. I mean, this is, for us Americans, this is, twice the age of our country. In this old fortress. This is an old residence for the royal family, military base at one time, a prison at another time. Another thing we've included is the Munch Museum. So if you've heard of Edvard Munch, most famously known for the Scream. So Edvard Munch is a Norwegian artist, was a Norwegian artist. So this museum is dedicated to his works. So it's a must-do in Oslo. Another potential venue for you all is the Oslo Domkirke, Oslo Cathedral. Just an interior shot of inside. So I'll spend a couple of nights, excuse me, in Oslo before heading into the scenic parts of Norway. We'll have you take the bus for a little bit. This is what I kind of jokingly refer to as the planes, trains, and automobiles days, which I guess maybe the adults will understand that reference. But today we'll take the bus to a town, and then we'll transfer to the train. The train will take us to Myrdal. Myrdal is up in the mountains. I would not be surprised don't be surprised if in this time of year next year you're still going to see snow up there, because you're up there in elevation, you're up there in latitude. In fact, in this photo here, this was taken sometime in the summer, you can see the snow up there. So you're going to transfer in Myrdal, and then one of the highlights of the trip is transferring to the Flåm Railway. You're going to take the train from Myrdal to Flåm. This is one of the world's steepest and most beautiful train journeys. It's one of Norway's most scenic highlights. This takes you about an hour to go from Myrdal to Flåm, and there's a unique system of tracks and spiraling tunnels along the ways going through the mountains and past the river, cascading waterfalls, and then you arrive into the town of Flåm. Flåm is beautifully positioned at the end of the fjord. Now, if you don't know what a fjord is, now is the time to study up on it. Basically, a fjord is an inlet of ocean water. So if we normally think of rivers escaping the water into the ocean, a fjord is, long time ago, the ice, glaciers escape the mountains. Anyway, this is seawater. So imagine seawater entering into the land. And these are massive bodies of waters. Literal cruise ships will traverse inland in these fjords. They're so deep. So Norway is known for its dramatic landscapes, dramatic heights. Is as high as the mountains are, the fjords and valleys are low. So it's a beautiful, one of the most beautiful places in the world, in my opinion. Then we've got you taking a ferry. So you'll transfer to the ferry. I'm talking, this is like a cruise ship, folks. This is how big the fjord is. You're going to take a cruise down. It's a 2-hour cruise from Flåm to Gudvangen. You're going to take a cruise down the Nærfjord, and this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. United Nations recognizes this as one of the most incredible places in all the world. So some of the most scenic fjords, some of the most scenic places of Norway. Then we'll get you into a town called Voss, and we'll have you up on Voss is known for like ski sports in the wintertime, beautiful scenic place in the summertime as well, including the Voss gondola. Take the gondola up to the top of the mountain for a beautiful scenic view of the lake. That's actually Lake in Voss down there, and beautiful mountains and surrounding scenery. Before heading into Bergen. Bergen's kind of the place to be on the west coast of Norway, known for its briggen. This is called the briggen in Bergen, and these go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Bergen is known for its very, colorful houses, as you can see here. In fact, Norway in general, you'll see a lot of colorful houses throughout the west coast, well, throughout all of Norway. Again, once you're in Bergen, just like Oslo, just like Stockholm, you'll have a city tour with local guides who will tell you about the history, the culture, and everything there is to know about Bergen. Another shot of Bergen. And then the musical component, musical connection here is we'll take you to Trollhagen, former home of Norway's best known composer, Edvard Grieg. Of course, Nina Grieg as well. So Edvard and Nina Grieg lived here, and you'll see the composer's cabin where he composed his most famous pieces, as well as his burial site. Another highlight to Bergen is the Fløibanen. This takes you up to the top of the mountain where you have a beautiful panoramic view of Bergen. So anyway, that's kind of the overview of the itinerary. That's kind of the fun stuff. And next is the logistical stuff. Mr. Haas, do you have anything to add there, or should I just jump right into the logistics of all this?
Nope, you can go ahead.
All right. Now, if anything, that was it. Time to catch my breath. All right. So what is this going to cost me? Total price we're going with right now is $46.95 per person in double occupancy. So the way we've structured this is as of June 1st, a $295 non-refundable deposit, and then monthly payments beginning July 20th. So July, August, September, etc., all the way through April 20th is when your final payment will be due. So again, that's 2 people per room. Now, what am I paying for? Airfare is going to be included. Private busing. So you got private buses to take you around. Like I said, 3-4-star accommodations. Breakfast is included daily. We've got multiple additional meals along the way, lunch or dinner, depending on the itinerary of the day. Performances along the routes, all the logistics associated with that. City tours, like I said, and all the sightseeing and entrance fees that you see in the itinerary. Now, like Mr. Haas said, how do I get registered? He just posted that link to your website. But in short, it's mygatewaytour.musicfestivals.com. Enter the passphrase, get registered, pay your deposit by June 1st. Again, detailed instructions are on the Iowa City Choir's website. One of the things I want to mention is there's insurance information included there. So it's a long 5-page document that you should read through. Insurance information is included. The detailed payment plan, cancellation penalties are all included there in that handout as well. Last thing I want to mention is just start thinking about your passport now. Those of you that may have a passport, just to check your expiration dates now, because if you received your passport when you were under the age of 16, that only has 5 years expiration. So just double check. And another interesting thing is that most countries require at least 3 months, if not 6 months validity. So even though your tour ends in June, it needs to be valid through December. So just start thinking about that now. No rush, but know that it takes, a couple of months. So with that, that concludes, my presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Haas to mediate any questions.
Sure. So I tend to like to do questions in a way where I it reduces my anxiety if I know if I'm asking questions, if I can be called upon and like have a hand raised and not like accidentally like talk over somebody else and then everybody's muting and then there's this awkwardness. If you know how, go ahead and raise your hand like using the reactions or to click on your little uh personal like there are uh well there's a way that you can raise your hand. So maybe it's not letting me raise my hand because I don't know if I turn it off. Never mind. I don't care. If you have questions, if you have questions, just unmute and go ahead and ask them. Okay, here's Mila. Go ahead, Mila.
So is it that all meals are included or just some?
So a breakfast is included daily, and then some lunches, some dinners will be included. So the shorter answer is no, not all, just some.
If I had to guess, when we went to Italy, I think like 6 or 7 out of the 10 days, there was either a dinner or a lunch. I mean, I wouldn't hold me to like um exactly 6 or exactly 7 for this trip, but that was about what it was when we were in Italy. We would either have a dinner or a lunch included 6 or 7 out of the 10 days.
Yeah, usually like we like to include either at least 2 meals per day, right? So either lunch or dinner in addition to breakfast. Yep.
Oh, and thank you, Alan. To raise your hand, click the more button and the icon appears. Good job. I wanted to it if I can share my screen, I wanted to just go, you guys can find this on, this is more just kind of like what it will look like if you or your son or daughter decide that they want to go on this trip. Um, I am gonna go to, if you can go to iowacitywestchoirs.com. I'm gonna share my sound too, or Iowa City West Choirs Facebook page. Can you all see my Facebook page right here? So these are
Yes.
like, this was our trip to Italy. And so these are some of the pictures from that. We'd have kids share pictures of places they went. There's like a good combination of like free time as well as formal performances. The students perform in concert blacks. And so just black formal clothing. And so this is Massimo. Is it the front? He was our local tour guide for the duration of our trip. Oh yeah, go ahead, Lovella.
I wanted to know if there's gonna be fundraising for the trip, and if there is, how much would that like go towards?
I have never coordinated fundraisers for the trip because I haven't, first of all, found fundraisers that seemed like worth it regarding like versus like a part-time job, like hourly, like how much like a fundraiser contributed versus like um doing something else that like wouldn't have things going to a third party as well. I would be open to if I mean there have been parents before that have organized a few fundraisers that they thought were particularly effective. We don't have any fundraisers planned right now, but if there were volunteers that wanted to facilitate one, I would be open uh to making that happen. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So that was an example of some of the pictures. This is an example of some of our students singing in one of the cathedrals. So most of the music that we perform is a cappella in nature, so they get a pitch and then it's only voices and then we just go. It's usually about a set of 20 minutes or so, and we usually rehearse that music the last usually in May. We start doing after school rehearsals a couple times a week, and then after our spring concert, we usually pick it up to 3 or 4 times a week to make sure that everybody is prepared. And so if you wanted to see more examples of like what it looks like for our choirs to be on tour, I would go to our Facebook page at Iowa City West Choirs and scroll down a little bit, as well as go to this international choir page that is on as part of our website. I'll be updating this page tomorrow to include the Sweden and Norway information too. We'll have it on the homepage as well as on this page, so that when I then take away the information from the homepage, when it gets cluttered with show choir and other things, then you'll always be able to then go to this international choir section of our website if you want further information. Okay. And then I'll stop sharing. All right. Let's see if they're in the chat. Oh, here is what is an appropriate amount of money students should take with them? It's a question from Noel. I think that's probably up to kind of personal preference. I think that I think safely if kids are just to have meals every day. I mean, safely, but I think $20 a meal would more than cover. So 40, if you figure $40 a day for food, that would well get you what you need, in addition to knowing that some of the meals would be provided. And then obviously things on top of that regarding souvenirs would be at your own discretion. Does that seem about right, Matt?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is true that Scandinavia is, one of the more expensive parts of the world. So yeah, calculating for meals on your own is the big thing, and then souvenirs. That's really it. So most of the things are included in the tour, except for the meals on your own and souvenirs. So I usually answer this question like, I don't know, maybe a couple $100. You're probably fine. Again, with the caveat that it's totally a personal decision. Some kids are happy with a hot dog or a slice of pizza. Some people want, a nice sit down meal. So it kind of depends.
And additionally, I think that there were a lot of people that brought credit cards. I mean, you can bring a certain amount of cash, but we had a lot of students bring just a lot of credit cards that were internationally accepted. And so then then that discussion is then up between the parent and the child about how much you're going to put on this.
Yeah. And I'll say this. I'll say this, that Norway and Sweden are very much a cashless society. So you don't even need cash. So you of course you can get it, but debit credit cards are king over there. That's for sure.
Very good. I'll get back to the chat, but first, Lori.
Sorry, took me a moment there.
Oh, you're good.
Find my unmute button. Now I got to figure out how to lower my hand. I'll work on that later. Question about if you are purchasing your own airfare, does the price that you pay for the land only tour include the flight between Sweden and Norway? And then also, what would be the timing on when you would have available when the flights are leaving and what airport they're leaving from, so that if, for example, I wanted to connect on either end with the choir group to fly out on the same flight, I would have that information and know, and I would be booking it on my own, but I would know, where to book and what timing and all that.
Yeah, so the fast answer is the flight between Stockholm and Oslo is included in the land price. I know that sounds weird, but if so, the way, if you're a land only package, thumbs up. If you're a land only package, you do not need to buy your own flight between Stockholm and Oslo. Second answer to that is roughly, I would say, at the earliest, late July probably is when we have an air contract. We can't lock in on an air contract until roughly 330 days prior to your return date, which is roughly, mid-late July of this year. So, we'll know more in a couple of months in terms of which airport, Chicago, Minneapolis. To be honest, I probably suspect Chicago. We'll know more what airline is going on then and all that. So no rush. If you get registered, Mr. Haas, do you know, do we allow that option? I can't remember.
Yep, we allow people to do the land only package. The only
Okay.
clarification I want to make regarding the land package is, and Lori knows this from going on the last trip, but then if you register for our trip, the expectation is kind of like you hang with the trip. So Lori would meet us kind of at the airport or like at our first stop, and then would get on the bus and then be with us the rest of the time, as opposed to, I think some people are on tours and they like pick and choose the things that they want to do. And that's just a personal decision for me. Like I like, it can be stressful enough, like managing like high school students overseas, that like just keeping track of everybody, it makes it much easier that way. But there have been a lot of people that have chosen the land only package because they either want to find their own flights, or there are people that want to either extend the trip after our trip is over, or they want to join us from another country. And either one of those are perfectly fine. Okay, we have a question of how are roommates determined? We will have two and would prefer them to room together. So, roommates are determined, first of all, if there are two people going on the trip and this person says, I want this person for my roommate, and this person says, I want this for my roommate, then those two people get to be roommates. Like, that is easy. Essentially what happens with people that remain that don't have strong roommate preferences is I try to do my best regarding like personality types and things like that to try to match, a lot of times asking students input about who they want to be roomed with, although that can be sticky sometimes where like you don't want anybody to necessarily be left out. So that's the first way that I determine roommates, is looking at all of the roommate preferences and accommodating as many of those as I can, and then taking the remainders and divvying them up in the best way I know possible, which also actually includes adults. And so if adults are going and you know another adult that's going that you want to room with them, then you can request that. But other than that, if it's a double room, you will likely be sharing a room with another adult of a similar gender. So that's kind of how that works. And can you talk about, Matt, the accommodations for special diets?
Yeah, not a problem. Not a problem. In fact, like I said earlier, in Norway and Sweden, I mean, everything will be in English. So you'll be able to see on menus, the allergens, whatever. You'll be able to speak to the chef if you need to in English. Not a problem. And it is actually European Union regulation that all the menus have allergens listed. So celiac, vegetarian, you name it. I mean, everything, peanuts, everything's listed. So furthermore, as part of your registration process, we collect that information and we send it along to the hotels, to the restaurants, anywhere where we're going to have group meals. So you'll be well taken care of.
Okay. Any other questions, either verbal or chat? Let me see. Let me check the chat to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I tell the kids I'm trying to be good with my wait time. Sometimes I don't wait and I just butt in. No, that's hard to imagine. Okay. Well, very good. You are all free to go. Matt and I will stick around and we'll answer any questions that either people maybe didn't think of yet, or didn't feel comfortable asking in front of the whole group. But other than that, I'll post this video online and feel free to share with other friends who might be interested. Thanks for coming out, guys. And then
David,
I'll
is there a
stop.
limit?
Oh,
Is there a
sorry.
limit? That's right. Is there a limit to the number of kids that go? What's the typical size of the group?
Right now I'm trying to cap it at 50 because we only took one. The first trip we took 2 buses, and that was fine. But this last trip we took, we only had 1 bus, and that was it logistically was much easier. So at least right now we're only taking 1 bus, which is about 50, people. And so we'll probably keep taking registrations until we get to 50. And then at that time, it may depend, well, on how I can be convinced. Or, like, for example, I don't necessarily think this would be the case, but like if there were another 30 people that wanted to go on top of the 50, then maybe we would look at opening it back up. But I also don't want to necessarily open up another bus and open us up to possibly having to increase the price, if that makes sense, Alan.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, so essentially we'll keep the registration open for 2 weeks. And so if we hit 50, then we'll stop. Or if we get to 2 weeks, we'll probably stop. Whichever comes first. I'll also stop recording in case there are questions people wanted to have that like also didn't want to have their voice recorded. So I'll stop recording.